The memories are haunting.
It bothers me, but I just sort of cut it off.
Roger Kaiser remembers every single second.
I was laying in the bed listening to a song, I think it was
His
Marty
childhood
Robbins,
he
and
wishes
had a
he
little
could forget.
speaker on
At
the-
5 years old, that smile you see here started to fade. His mother abandoned him.
I've never been able to find out who my father was.
An orphan, home became the Children's Home Society in Jacksonville.
When we were there, we had nothing. We had no toys, we had nothing. There was nothing to do but play on 2 broken swings and some monkey bars. We had 1 roller skate. It's the only toy I ever remember having.
Kaiser stayed here until he was 12 years old. In 1959, the state sent him to a school just outside of Tallahassee called the Florida Reform School for Boys at Marianna.
That was a very happy day for me to know I was going to the reform school. I was getting out of this mess. But boy, did I not realize that I was going into hell.
The school focused on educating troubled boys and teaching them trades, which would help in their future. Kaiser says on his first day, he was told about a place on campus called the White House, a place you didn't want to go to, a place near the mess hall, a place where lives were changed forever.
A lot of good boys went in this White House, but a lot more Charlie Mansons walked back out than did good boys, and that is absolutely true.
Kaiser says he was told if you tried to run away, this is where you would go for a beating.
I said, well, I'm not worried about that. I'm not going to run away. Besides, I got nowhere to run.
But then the beating started to happen for other reasons: smoking, cursing, not following simple directions. Within months of being here, Kaiser would make his first trip inside these 4 walls.
The White House torture chamber. That's what it was. It was a torture chamber.
He remembers standing with a group of boys.
Grabbed me by the arm, and we started walking near the dining hall. I knew right then that I was going down.
He says he was not told what he did wrong.
We made it to the White House door, and I know this story. I can see it in my head just as plain today as when I was 12 years old. He put the lock in the door, and he opened it, and they pushed me, and there's a little concrete step from the ground, and my foot didn't make it over it, and I tripped. When I did, I fell on the floor, and the button came off my shirt. And I remember it was like slow motion. I was so scared, and I watched that button roll down that little hallway and go around the corner.
Kaiser says he was forced onto a bed soaked in blood. His face was crammed into a filthy pillow.
It stunk. It stunk. But we didn't care about that. I mean, you were fixing to get a beating. Who cares about a little blood and feces and slobber and guts on a pillow? That was the least of our problems.
What happened next is locked in his mind forever.
I looked at his face, and I knew that man was going to kill me. There was no doubt about it. He said, turn your head to the wall. And I turned my head to the wall, and then I felt something slide out from under the pillow, and I knew what it was. It was the leather strap. And they beat me, and they beat me, and they beat me, and they beat me on the back, they beat me on the buttocks, the legs, the head.
Kaiser says he doesn't know how long the beating lasted because he passed out. When he came to, he found himself in another building. He doesn't know how he got there.
I walked into the bathroom, and I looked in the mirror, and I just about panicked. I mean, I couldn't even tell who I was. I was so bloody. I looked like a monster. I took my pants down and tried to pull my underwear down, and they wouldn't come down. They'd been beaten into my buttocks. And then I really just went crazy, crying.
Kaiser says he visited the White House 5 times, but was only beaten twice. He says those other times he waited in line for a beating.
He sent me to the back of the line.
And somehow got lucky.
He said, I'm too tired to beat your goddamn ass right now.
He remembers how Saturdays were set aside for the beatings. Kaiser talks about it rarely showing any emotion, except for one story about his friend Joseph.
I said, you okay, Joseph? I had to stop. I said, are you okay, Joseph? He said, Roger, would you kiss me? And I said, Joseph, I ain't never kissed no man person before. He says, no, I mean like a grandma would kiss you if you're hurt or that they love you. And I got down on my knees and I kissed him on the forehead.
Kaiser says while some survived the abuse, others did not.
There were boys that never came back. that were taken down, never seen again.
He remembers one boy in particular who was eating in the mess hall and taken away.
They drug him out of the room. We watched them take him to the White House, close the door, never saw that boy ever again.
He also remembers a time where another boy was killed, but not at the White House.
I saw one of them murdered and put in the dryer, in the tumble dryer, because he got up into the face of the counselor. And they had the boys put this boy in the tumble dryer.
And you never saw that child again?
Yeah, I saw him about 30 minutes later when he was brought out dead, covered in a white blanket and thrown in the back seat of a car.
Kaiser believes that boy and many other victims are buried out here in a graveyard, which years ago was part of the school's property. There are 32 graves marked only with a plastic pipe made into a cross.
No one knew what they were because there's no record of them at this point.
Frank Piniella is with the Department of Juvenile Justice, which took over the reform school in 1994. He says it is unclear who these graves belong to. There's no name. The state has nothing.
We don't have any records of that. We don't, like I said, we don't even have records of who's buried there. That would be something that we could look into.
It's unclear which state agency ran the school in the 1950s and 60s. DJJ says it has looked at files and record books from the past, but found nothing that signals any abuse. Still, the state recently acknowledged Kaiser's pain and the pain of others who have come forward in the last year.
And these boys, I didn't know.
Kaiser first met these men face to face about a month ago. 4 boys who are now men went back to the White House for the first time.
I was in there 5 times, but I never saw it before. It's because you were too scared to see it. And so there's this long hallway that goes in, probably about maybe 20 foot long. I never knew that hallway was there. And as you walk down that hallway, there's like 3 cells on each side, and where the little window in there is way up high, like in a Western movie, and there's these big 3 or 4 bars up in there. And that's the only light that comes into there. To the right is 1 cell, and to the left is another cell. And that's the cells where they beat us.
There are signs that have been left behind of what happened here. Blood-stained floors, a bloody handprint on a door frame, and this. Someone by the name of Ellerby left his mark, noting he was here in 1966 and 67, and he came to the White House 19 times.
I don't ever remember the writing on the wall because I was too afraid to look. I remember the bed, you know, and the mattress, and it was stained and bloody, and the smell. I'll never forget the smell.
The stench is still there. Kaiser and those other men took pictures inside to say goodbye to the past that's haunted them for decades. The state said goodbye too, placing a plaque near the White House's front door. The state then sealed those doors shut forever.
That's not a wide room. I mean, you can touch it by just putting your arms out. It was horrible. It was horrible.
His hope is one day he will be able to lock the past out and leave it behind too. His grandchildren, he says, is what helps him move forward. He's also put his pain to paper. He's an author, but still, there is one thought that lingers.
It's really a shame that I wasn't able to see that the world loved me, because I could have given them back so much more as a child.